My thoughts on Antonio Conte leaving at the end of this season, my thoughts on the board and the club decisions. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all keeping well. So, early Sunday morning, Italian journalist and transfer expert Gianluca Di Marzio has stated the following. Antonio Conte will leave Tottenham Hotspur Football Club at the end of this season. There was no spark, his contract is expiring, and the club has not asked him for a renewal. He then went on to say the club does not like the frequent jibes. Antonio Conte wants players to win, whilst the club prefers to trade. The feeling with the club has not clicked. His family, amongst other things, has remained in Italy. Now, my thoughts on the club, the board, and the situation at Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. In simple terms, it is an absolute mess. We have Fabio Paratici, who we don't even know whether he is allowed to work in England any longer. It now looks like Antonio Conte will be leaving at the end of the season, if not before. The club are not wanting to spend money in this January transfer window. I know Spurs are trying to get deals done, but these are loans or cheap deals that, of course, us fans do not want. We want quality players in this Tottenham Hotspur squad and in the starting 11. Of course, we want European football for next year. And when I say European football, of course, we want to stay in that Champions League, as do the club want to stay in the Champions League. But you've got to invest, you've got to spend the money in order to keep up with the other teams around you. Antonio Conte and various other managers in our history have stated exactly the same thing. You need to keep up with all of the teams around you. And at the moment, we are just trying to get cheap deals done, and we're trying to get loan players in. And at the time of making this, Fabrizio Romano has just tweeted that Spurs are trying to sign Nicolo Zaniolo from Roma. Roma want a permanent deal. Spurs want a loan deal. Now, Gianluca Di Marzio's comments this morning, and by the way, he is an extremely reliable journalist, one of the best in the world, in my opinion, when it comes to football stories. And of course, he is Italian. He knows Antonio Conte very well, as does Fabrizio Romano, who has come on this channel many, many times talking about Antonio Conte before he signed for us as head coach back in 2021. But let me talk about this decision, because Gianluca Di Marzio has stated that Spurs have decided not to renew Antonio Conte's contract. I think that this is another huge mistake at Tottenham Hotspur, and there have been a lot of errors made. There have been a lot of bad decisions in recent times, which of course are frustrating every Spurs fan at the moment. And I'm one of the positive ones. I consider myself as a very positive Spurs fan, and I know it frustrates a lot of people a lot of time, because I try and see the best in situations. I try and see the best, in situations that are quite frustrating. But this is a really bad decision. We have brought in a serial winning manager, a world-class manager in Antonio Conte. And I know that there are some fans out there that don't like Conte, they don't like his style of play. But as I've said, since he arrived, if you give him the tools and, certainly in the system that he wants to play, if we give him what he needs, I believe that Antonio Conte will build us something special and we will be successful, i.e. winning trophies, which are way, way overdue. I find this situation extremely sad again, that another fantastic manager has come into our club. The club, in fairness, showed ambition when they brought in Jose Mourinho. They showed ambition when they brought in Antonio Conte. It seems now that both of these managers, are not going to work out at the club. Of course, Jose was sacked 6 days before a cup final. I'll come on to that in a minute. But when you bring in a manager like Antonio Conte, I think we all know that he is a manager that demands a lot. He doesn't spend a lot. I know this. I think this is a bit of a myth where people think that he comes in and he wants to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds. No, he just wants the right players in. He wants the players that are ready to walk into a starting 11 and do a job. He doesn't want people like Jed Spence. That is a perfect example. It was a club signing. You know, Jed Spence is a club signing, whereas he would have much rather bring in a player that he knows that can do a job immediately. I'm personally a big fan of Antonio Conte, and I feel absolutely gutted this morning that, again, another manager is not going to work out at the club. What next for Spurs? I'll come on to that shortly. But when you look back, you know, over the past few years, you know, going into a Champions League final, having not spent a penny in 518 days, Mauricio Pochettino took us to a Champions League final, you know, 1st of June 2019, and then, of course, early November, he was sacked. I believed, and I still believe, that Mauricio Pochettino had more than enough credit in the bank for what he did at Spurs, you know, getting us European football places every single year, Europa League, and then, of course, Champions League year in, year out during his reign at Spurs, taking us to a Champions League final, having not spent a penny in 518 days. I say that again, because I doubt that that will ever happen again in football history for as long as all of us will live. And then, of course, he was sacked. I thought it was a really poor decision. I was absolutely gutted. And at the time, you know, I put videos out and audio clips stating that it felt like a death in the family. I felt that strongly about it. I was very, very upset by that decision. I thought it was a really poor decision by the club. However, the next morning, everybody woke up. Jose Mourinho was our manager. I thought that, okay, Mauricio Pochettino has gone. They brought in a serial winning manager, Jose Mourinho. The exciting thing for me at the time was that Jose Mourinho had won trophies at every single club he has ever managed. And of course, it went wrong for him. He was sacked 6 days before a cup final. Now, Jose Mourinho divided opinion amongst the fan base again. Personally, I thought that Jose Mourinho had the right to be in charge of that cup final. Of course, Ryan Mason came in. Another really poor decision, in my opinion. You bring in a serial winning manager. You've got to give him the time. You've got to give him the tools. And, you know, certainly 6 days before a cup final, I thought was a poor decision again. Nuno Espirito Santo, up next. We waited 72 days for a manager to come in. 72 days. And this was another poor decision. Nuno Espirito Santo, we went through many, many managers. The club interviewed many managers like Gattuso, who of course got a lot of stick for things that he has done in the past or comments that he has said in the past. And then November 2021, we appoint Antonio Conte. Again, full credit to the board because they've appointed a world-class manager. But what is the point in appointing a world-class manager like Antonio Conte if you are not going to back him 100% and drive this club forward? Because we are starved of success. We are starved of trophies. And whatever next now, you know, you go from Pochettino, you go to Jose Mourinho. I'm not even going to mention Nuno because he was here for, you know, such a short time. And then you go to Conte. Jose Conte. Where on earth do you go from this situation? And Spurs, interestingly, do not want to renew the contract for Antonio Conte. Now, let's come on to transfers. Now, in recent years, and this one certainly sticks in my memory, Bruno Fernandes, we were heavily linked with him. Of course, he went to Manchester United in the end. We didn't get Bruno Fernandes. We got Jedson Fernandes. It's unbelievable. The difference in quality. You know, when employees of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club go out and identify players to sign, and then suddenly the people at the top say, no, we're not going to sign these because they're too expensive or we can get a cheaper option in. That's exactly what's happened here. Bruno Fernandes is a real quality player, a real leader on the pitch, and Jedson Fernandes played a handful of games for us. And, you know, the memory of him is him missing a penalty against Norwich City just before COVID in the FA Cup where we went out. The difference in transfers, you know, why employ people, you know, to recruit and plan ahead and then don't go through with the first, second, third rate targets that we identify, because it seems that we go down the route of then signing the 4th, 5th or 6th choice targets, which aren't good enough. And we, as fans, all identify this, and we all see this, and we have seen it for a very long time. It's truly disappointing yet again. Now, other disappointing things, of course, and other things that stick in the mind is the Super League. Spurs wanted to go into a Super League, and from what I'm told from the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club went into a meeting with the Trust, and the Trust said, are we going to enter a Super League? And the club said no. And then, of course, a short while later, it looked like we were going to go into the Super League. And, of course, all the fans around the country stopped this from happening, which was absolutely fantastic fan power. But there are other things like the club not paying the staff during COVID-19. Tottenham Hotspur are the 9th richest club in the world right now. The figures came out only a couple of days ago. The ninth richest club in the world, and we always seem to have issues in spending the money on the pitch. Now we have, and as I've said on this channel many, many times, and as I'm super positive a lot of the time about our club, we have a fantastic stadium, one of the best in the world. We have fantastic training facilities. We've got a decent squad. It could be better. It should be better. But why not ever take us onto that next level? We've always been a couple of players away in the transfer window, which is so frustrating to all of us. We can all see, even when you go back, for the Poch days, we were going for the league title. We had such a great squad. 1, 2, 3 more additions in that squad. We could have been parading down that high road with the Premier League trophy. Now, what's next for Tottenham Hotspur? I can see a couple of things happening. Spurs could either go down the route of sacking Antonio Conte before the end of the season and putting Ryan Mason in charge, or have a plan of bringing Mauricio Pochettino back. I wouldn't be at all surprised. I think that all of the journalists at the moment and everybody close to the club are getting this feeling that Mauricio Pochettino is ready to replace Antonio Conte, whether it be now, whether it be next week, or whether it be on the 1st of July when Antonio Conte leaves Spurs. Or could we go down the route again of employing another world-class manager, i.e. a manager that has been there, done it, and won the trophies? Someone like Thomas Tuchel, who, of course, we are being linked with at the moment. I wouldn't be at all surprised by any of these options. Do I think it's right to bring back Mauricio Pochettino right now? Probably not. I think that whoever comes in needs to be the one making the decisions. I think that there is a big difference between having a manager in charge, and there's a big difference of having a managing director or a sporting director in charge of the transfers. I think there's a big difference of having just a head coach. When you think back to the summer of 2019, after the Champions League final defeat against Liverpool, Mauricio Pochettino went into the press conference in Munich and was very unhappy by some of the journalist questions, because he said, I'm not the manager, I'm the head coach. And I think there is a huge, huge difference in some decision making. You go back to the Jed Spence situation with Antonio Conte. It's a club signing. If it's a club signing and the manager don't fancy these players, then what's the point in having them there? The manager should be bringing in the players that they want, not players that the board want, or not players that the sporting director or anybody else at the club wants. It should be about the manager's decisions in what they want, the players that they are going to play, in the system that they are going to play. Now, where do I stand at the moment as a Spurs fan? Well, I'm very, very frustrated, and I'm very drained with all of this as well, because I thought that the club was going to change. I thought in the summer, when we started getting signings in early, I finally felt that, we were changing. We were going to act like a big club, and we were changing the way that we have done things in the past. Now, Daniel Levy said that the stadium, when the stadium was built and the money and the revenue was coming in, this was going to be a game changer. His words, not mine, a game changer. All of the money was then going to be spent on the pitch. This clearly hasn't happened. We have got, just over a week of the January transfer window left. Yes, we could probably get in a few signings, but if now Antonio Conte is leaving at the end of the season, there doesn't feel like any plan, there doesn't feel like any direction, and there certainly doesn't feel like any ambition, which makes me extremely sad. Now, I feel in recent years that the board have done a good job in terms of off the pitch. the training ground, and of course the stadium as well. You know, the stadium is one of the best in the world. There's no denying that. But it is now all about progress on the pitch, giving a manager the tools, and you know, giving the money, spending the money, and bringing in some world-class players. I've said on this channel hundreds of times, one of the last times I was really wowed by a signing was Jurgen Klinsmann back in 1994 when he just played at the World Cup. Van der Vaart was another great signing. I could probably name, players on one hand who I've been excited about, and that isn't good enough. You know, some of the other teams around us, opposition fans that I know, they seem to be excited, virtually every window by the signings that they have. And I want to see Spurs bringing in some world-class players, showing some real ambition, and start putting trophies in the cabinet, because the amount of banter we all get as Spurs fans about we never ever win anything. When you look back at all of the players that have left us without winning a trophy, it's devastating. Now, what is next for the board? Now, do the board sell up? Do they want to sell up? I don't believe that they do. I don't believe that this board will be going anywhere in the near future. I know that a lot of people are calling the board out at the moment, stating that they want the board gone and Daniel Levy. But I can't see this happening in the near future. And even if they decided tomorrow that, okay, we're going to sell up, you've then got to look for a buyer. And this could take a very, very long time. Now, the reason I've made this episode is because this last week or so, a lot of people have been asking me what are my thoughts on the club situation at the moment. What are my thoughts on the board? What have been my thoughts on, past situations? Well, here it is. I'm very unhappy right now. I feel very drained with the whole situation. I don't know where this club is at. I don't know the direction we're going in. And all I want to see is ambition. I want to see ambition off the pitch. I want to see it on the pitch, certainly. And I want to see trophies. I want to see success. I want to see, one of the best managers in the world at our club. We have one at the moment, but we're about to get rid of them. I haven't even spoken about people like Harry Kane. What on earth must Harry Kane be thinking and feeling right now? Because he said so often, as long as this club is going in the right direction, I will stay. I think that we need another miracle, as Conte said, this season to finish in the Champions League. If we finish outside the Champions League again, does Harry Kane stay at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club? Because at the end of the season, he would have broken Jimmy Greaves' record, all-time record at Spurs. He will probably want the Premier League record. So will he go to another Premier League club with 12 months remaining on his contract? It's a mess, as I've said. There are so many things that need to be sorted out at this football club right now. And most importantly, I feel that the club now need to come out and give a statement. They need to, Fabio Pratici, Daniel Levy, one of the board, they need to come out. They need to say exactly what the situation is at the moment and what the direction and ambition is. I think that the club need to reply to the official supporters trust as soon as possible. I think that it needs to put out a public statement, certainly about the Fabio Pratici situation at the moment, because we don't know whether our director of football is allowed to work in the UK or not. Who is in charge of transfers at the moment? Is it Greta Stenston? Is it him identifying players at the moment? Is Fabio still working with him as things stand? Is now Daniel Levy back in charge of the transfers? The Conte situation, how are the fans going to feel about Antonio Conte now, knowing that he is leaving at the end of the season? So many comments that I've read online this morning, it just seems that a lot of Spurs fans have just given up.